So we're going to be talking about some targeted color mixing today. So let me introduce the co-primary palette, because that's primarily where our big thinking is going to come from. And then what we're going to do is we're going to bring in specific colors. I have a bunch of little colored cards that I have not rehearsed. And I'm going to just bring one in and just talk you through how each one is mixed. And we're going to get as close to those as we can. But the co-primary palette, I have a whole video on the co-primary palette. So I recommend watching that first because it lays out a lot of the thinking. But anyway, lemon yellow, cadmium yellow, cerulean blue, ultramarine blue. This is a rose madder. There's an alizarin crimson right here that we may end up getting into if we need to. This is what amounts to cadmium red light. It's orange molybdate. And this is ivory black. And black is going to play a role. I know when most people take a painting class, their teacher tells them that black's not a color and that black will ruin your painting. And that's just not the case. So I want to make sure that we talk about how to use black. So the first color that I have here, I have these little chips. So the first thing we want to do is identify the color. And so I'm going to say that this color is blue first. Its value is, well, it's lighter than the palette, so it's on the light, like a middle light. And its intensity is very low. So you have to think of all those things first. And then what you can do is say, okay, the most important thing when you start mixing is hue. So, because we have to know where to start. So this color is blue, and which kind of blue is it? Does it lean more towards green or more towards purple? Because those are the only two things that blue can do. So I'm going to say that this one's kind of greenish. So we have a little cerulean blue there. And now I want to make, so this could be, if I add white to this, it's not going to be dull enough, but what I want to do is get my decision about the blue. Titanium white is really strong, so I'm probably going to need more blue. But I just want to get my initial blue idea to the proper value, so I'm trying to mix it to the value of that. And that looks like it's a little bit light, but it's close. And we'll be able to slowly hone in on it as we go here. Okay, so the next step, this needs to, it's the right value, it's basically the right hue, but it needs to be grayer. Now we could go the other way and say this is gray first and blue second, in which case we could reverse our idea. But I'm taking ivory black, which already leans towards blue, and I'm going to get that gray to be the same value. As our chip. Okay, so you can see that the neutral gray, being the same value, it's just a little bit too warm. So if we take some of this and bring it in with some of this, we're very, very close. And now if we need to do any fine tuning to this color, we can do that. If we need to add if we need to make it a little bit bluer, if we need to make it a little grayer. Part of me wants to, I have a yellow ochre over here off camera. I kind of want to add a tiny bit of yellow ochre to it, just to make the blue a little bit greener. Maybe a little grayer. All right. So that on the camera, it looks a little bit dark. So we'll add some white to it. Ah, too much. Lost it for a second there. But we're back. All right, that's color number 1. So this color is green first. Now we can do a bunch of different things, and maybe I'll do this color a couple different ways. But if we want to start with the co-primaries, it's a green that leans more towards blue. So again, if we start with cerulean, and it's relatively dull, but making it, using this orange, or this yellow that leans towards orange, might make it a little bit too dull. So I'm going to grab the yellow, lemon yellow, because they both lean in the direction of this green. And it looks like I'm going to probably need a little more blue. But once I get this initial hue that I think is fairly close, then I can go and start making adjustments to the value. And I hate titanium white. It ruins everything. All right, so that's that same hue. Okay, so it is a little bit dark. Through the camera, this looks much darker. In real life, it looks very, very close. Go with a little bit more white. All right, let's keep adding white. All right, that's very, very close. If we keep adding white, I'm thinking that we're going to blow past the color. See, I thought that initial move was too light, and it turns out it wasn't. All right, so in adding all that white, it did get a little bit duller. But anyway, let's put this off to the side and say that that's a reasonably successful version of that color. All right, so this color is a blue first that leans towards purple. So ultramarine is that already. So I'm going to start with ultramarine blue, and then I'm going to adjust the value. All right, and again, there's a couple different ways we can approach this from here. If we think that this blue isn't purple enough, we can try throwing in a purple to try and push it more towards violet. Or if we think that just adding a gray to this is going to get us there, then we can try that. That's what I'm going to do. But first, I need some more titanium white. So I'm going to mix up the value in gray over here. All right, that's pretty close. Looks like we are going to need something to push a little bit more purple. This doesn't look quite right. It's very close. Can make it a little bit lighter. But it seems like it does require a little bit more of a red push. So we got to be real careful from here, because if we just go with a red like this, it's going to shift it way out of control. So I have a burnt sienna over here that I want to check against the value. Looks like the value is basically right. Just adding a little burnt sienna. Seems to be getting us there. And I know I'm kind of off camera, but I move things up a little bit so you can see. There we go. All right, so we're ready for the next round of colors here. So this color we're going to say is orange first. Its value is kind of in the middle, and its intensity compared to our starting orange is pretty low. But let's start there. And there, again, there's probably going to be a couple different ways to do this. Sometimes you can start low and go high. Sometimes you can start high and go low. So we're starting out. Let's make it a little bit more opaque. The value here is basically already the same, and our orange leans in the proper direction. It's just too bright. So the next question is, how do we knock this down? Now, if we use a gray, we could do that, or we could, it kind of leans a little more towards yellow. I'm going to start with the yellow move, and then we'll try it again with the gray and see if that gives us anything different. So this is a little bit too light, but yellow ochre is more than likely what's called for here. And it will probably fix the value problem on its own. If I think it's too light, the mix is probably going to end up being a little darker. All right, yellow ochre. It looks like it's still a little bit too bright. So we add some titanium white to help knock it down. Let's see, lay that out so you guys can see it. Very, very close. All right, so we have a purple, and this is a purple that leans towards red. So we might have purple paint, but let's start with a red that leans towards purple, and we'll add a blue that also leans towards purple to try and get the hue right. This looks like it needs to be a little redder. All right. Now we can come in with some titanium white and have a go at adjusting the value. Now, we mixed up our hue relatively blind because it was so dark. We could have mixed the red to this value and then the blue to this value and then put them together, but that would probably wouldn't speed things up anymore. But okay, so we have, it looks like it's the right color, but it's just a little bit too bright. So if we want to dull down a purple, there's two different things we can do. Let's see, I'm going to put one group there, one group there. One thing we can do to dull down a purple is, again, mix a gray. My guess is this isn't going to work so well because it's also warm. Actually, that worked, not bad. So that purple was too bright. We mixed up a gray at the same value, threw that in, that worked. This is a purple that leans towards red. So if we use the complementary color to dull it down, we'll need a yellow that leans towards green. So that would be lemon yellow, but that's too light. I don't want to ruin the value. So I'm going to make a yellow that leans towards green over here. Out of yellow ochre and cerulean. And see if I can't control this a little bit better. All right, that looks a little bit more green than it does yellow. So I'm bringing it back. It's dulling it down all right, but the yellow part of it is just not really letting it get any cooler. So that's a no-go. That's a little bit better. Still a little on the warm side. You know what? Maybe I should have tried ultramarine blue and yellow ochre. I think that's probably more likely to give me the result I'm looking for. So I'll get those to the same value. There we go. That worked better. So it's a little bit grayer, slightly different from the first one. but very close. Now when I was making that green, yellow that leans towards green, I used cerulean and yellow ochre first because I knew that cerulean was going to keep things on the green side. When I got into the purple and things just stayed sort of almost orange, kind of yellow, that made me think that the green in the mix was just too strong. So when you use ultramarine blue, it leans towards purple. When you mix that with a yellow, you get a green, but the green is automatically duller, and if you lean it towards blue, it's cooler. And then we ended up with this, which looks like it just needs a little bit of white, and it's there. So I wanted to use the example of this last color we're going to mix to just reiterate some of the main points from the video, and to remind you that color mixing is supposed to be repeatable, scientific. There shouldn't be a lot of, I mean, there's guessing involved, but if you follow the right steps, you'll be able to get really, really close to the color you want very quickly. So this last one is basically yellow ochre, but it needs some modifications. So that's my yellow ochre right out of the tube. And it looks like it's too bright and it's too light. So I've got some grays mixed up already. That's going to turn it green because ivory black and titanium white are both cool. I'm willing to try that. Let's put another one over here just in case. I'm willing to try going and allowing it to go green because I am noticing that. So let's do it again with our gray. I kind of randomly chose the colors I was doing in this video, and a lot of them ended up requiring that gray come in as a way to solve some of the color problems. And I guess these aren't colors that I normally work with because I don't find myself using this gray solution all the time. In fact, it's kind of rare for me. So, oh, I needed to make it darker. Let's go a little darker. All right. So it looks like from here it just needs to be more yellow. It looks like my yellow ochre is kind of weak. That's what I get for using titanium white. Looks like my gray wasn't dark enough to start with because I'm getting everything right except for the value. So let's darken that gray and try again. All right, looks like that's all that was required. Let's just start with a slightly darker gray. It still looks like this one could use a bump, so between these two, if we don't want things to get too bright, here, let's divide this in half. Add a little lemon yellow to this side. Let's see if we can get it any closer. Now, when we add these yellows, we end up making it the mix lighter and slightly brighter. But that is something that's starting to happen, and that looks pretty good. It's not 100% there. Let's try the same thing. I have another idea, hang on. So this one is going to make it a little bit brighter. Looks like it's a little bit light. I wanted to try this Indian yellow over here. And Indian yellow is a yellow that starts out darker. So when you mix it in a scenario like this, I know most people don't have it, but it turns out Indian yellow got us there very quickly. So this mix was yellow ochre, a little bit of gray, and then that made it too dull and too light. So the brighter and darker Indian yellow came in and gave us exactly the right color. So here I am talking about how to get to your mixes fast, and it took me a couple tries to do something as simple as this, but it kind of shows you the color mixing. The ideas behind it are simple, but actually pulling them off is going to require some practice. Hopefully these exercises helped you understand how to plan and think about your mixes in terms of targeting them. And to review, remember, you want to mix for your hue first, your value second, and then you make adjustments that you need to make. Usually that's intensity, but sometimes when you mix for your value, the hue will get messed up because the colors that you might use to change the value usually have a temperature and they'll shift your color out.